Ministries. He's written a book we're going to discuss with him on the program today, What Every Christian Needs to Know About the Qur'an. And so, James, in welcoming you to the program, I'd like to know, are you a pro-cap or anti-cap when it comes to email and text?
Well, listening to that was rather enlightening. I'm afraid both of you are about 25 years behind the time, but that's okay. It's all right.
I think we're actually further behind than that.
Well, it's better be.
That's actually been one of the problems in choosing a Bible translation to use on blogs and stuff is I'm a critical consultant on the New American Standard Bible, and we used all caps for our Old Testament citation. Well, that just doesn't work electronically anymore. You can't quote from that because it sounds like you're screaming at everybody. So that is actually an irony is it has made it a little bit harder to use the NASB in blog posts and things like that.
You told my friend, you're going to have to deal with your texting anger management issue. You're going to lose all your friends. They're not going to be texting you back. James R. White is our guest. I'm Tim with Ed. The book is called What Every Christian Needs to Know About the Qur'an.
I have an opening question, Tim, if you don't mind me jumping in again.
Go ahead and ask your opening question of James, Ed.
James, please tell me, how do you spell this book? Is it Qur''AN or is it KORAN? How do you spell Qur'an?
Well, I normally use the QUR''AN, but remember, obviously, any transliteration from any of the Semitic languages is going to allow for multiple renderings, and in the olden days, it was more often KORAN. But Qur'an is probably the best way to render it, and that's certainly most common amongst English-speaking Muslims that I'm familiar with.
All right, so I'm behind on that too. I'm finding out. It's been a trying day, James. I'm behind the curve on a lot of areas.
We'll get to that later.
Yeah.
Hey, I want to ask you, James, why does this interest you?
Well, I've been involved in apologetics for 30 years, but starting in late 2005, I started turning my attention toward Islam for various reasons. 9/11 was not one of them, but I was actually studying the persecuted church, and you can't study the persecuted church without studying Islam in our modern world. And so I saw that they were using a lot of the same arguments that I had been dealing with in my apologetic work elsewhere. And so really the book comes out of coming up on seven and a half years worth of interaction with Muslims now. I've had the opportunity of doing debates with Muslims in the United States, Canada, Australia, and the United Kingdom. And I'll be doing a whole series of debates in Johannesburg, South Africa, with various Muslim opponents coming up in just a few weeks. So this isn't just academia. This isn't just the classroom. I've had the opportunity, exactly a week after the attack on the Benghazi consulate, I was debating in the East London Mosque in London, which is the largest mosque in Europe, on whether Muhammad's prophesied in the Bible. What I'm talking about has been formed out of dialogue with a wide variety of believing Muslims over a number of years now, primarily in public settings. And so I realized there was a paucity of good books on the subject that would help Christians to understand what the Qur'an says to them, because we are addressed directly in the pages of the Qur'an. And because Islam has become such a major world power and issue, I think it's important for Christians to know what the Quran says to them and how we can present the gospel to the Muslim people.
And James, what's interesting to me is now I've never actually debated with a Muslim, but I've read lots of accounts of people who have, and I have debated in witnessing or in conversations around dinner or whatever, people who are atheists and people who are from different religious traditions and all those kinds of things, moral relativists, plenty of opportunity to have those kinds of discussions. What's fascinating to me is that Muslims, I would think that most Christians are not prepared to debate with Muslims because they don't come at Christianity, at least from what I've read, they don't come at Christians in the usual way. a lot of their objections to Christianity are not things that most Christians are familiar with or prepared for. Is that been what you have found?
Well, there's definitely a massive communication barrier between us because of the fact that most of us have not read the Qur'an. We know very little about Muslim belief and practice, and the exact same thing is true for the Muslim community. When I speak to organizations or to churches, I'll ask how many have read the Qur'an, and I'll have maybe one or two will sort of put their hand halfway up and mouth the word parts or something like that. And if I spoke to a Muslim group, I'd have the very same percentage as far as people who've read the Bible. So even though the Qur'an makes reference to the Torah in the Injil, the law and the gospel, and says they were sent down by God and they contain light and guidance and things like that, the vast majority of Muslims believe that the Bible has been radically corrupted and therefore they really don't know what's in it. And the biggest problem is neither did the author of the Qur'an, for that matter. And so you have this strange situation where the Qur'an says we worship the same God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and yet accuses Christians of having gone into excess, having gone beyond what Allah had revealed, and in essence elevating our prophet, the prophet that was sent to us in the Messiah Jesus, to a position that he should not have. Jesus is just a prophet. He is virgin-born, performed many miracles, but is not truly God, and certainly is not the Son of God, even though that's another big question. What does the Quran understand the Son of God to mean? So you have a world religion that claims to be the fulfillment, in essence, of two other world religions, Judaism and Christianity, and yet its founding document, which is a relatively short document, the Quran is only about 57% the length of the New Testament, that founding document is abysmally ignorant of the content of the New Testament itself. And in fact, the author of the Quran thinks there are things in the New Testament that are not. He had heard various Gnostic Gospels and stories being told by Christians hundreds of years after the time of Christ and assumed all those things were in the New Testament when they're not. So the problem we run into is that the Muslim looks at the Bible through the lens of the Quran, so he's looking at it backwards. It's an anachronistic problem. And so if the Quran misrepresents the doctrine of the Trinity, as it does in Surah 5, 116 and other places, then what's going to happen is the Muslim's going to assume that the Quran is correct and interpret your words in light of what the Quran says. And so it introduces a real issue of communication. And again, the weight ends up falling upon us to make that communication, to bridge that gap.
Talking to James R. White about his book, What Every Christian Needs to Know About the Quran. And the book is published by Bethany House. I want to ask you, Christianity started obviously 2,000 years ago, and time is measured on that, the birth of Christ. The Muslim religion was founded by Muhammad in the 6th century. Is that right? 7th.
600s.
Well, he died in 632, so that'd be 7th century.
7th century. How did, and it's one of the world's major religions now. I mean, maybe second only to Christianity in terms of sheer numbers worldwide. How did it grow and spread? I can understand Christianity teaches something, obedience to, repentance of sin, reconciliation with God who loves people, and you want to live your life according to the Scripture, the Bible I'm talking about, to please God. And then, when we die, we go to heaven to live forever with Jesus and with our fellow believers. I mean, that's the simplification, but the essence still of the Christian message. And you avoid hell,
Right.
which the Bible talks about. What is the attraction of, or does there need to be an attraction of Islam that has caused it to have so many followers around the world? You want to explain that one to me?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, from the Islamic viewpoint, the Muslims do not believe that Islam started with Muhammad. They believe that Abraham was a Muslim, that Jesus was a Muslim, that Islam is the original religion, and that everything is a development from it. So, just from their perspective, if you were to put it the way they put it, they'd immediately object to that by saying, well, in reality, we're the original religion, everything else is development from that. But as to why it's so large today, one of the biggest problems, and I think most really honest, observant Muslims would admit this, is that the vast majority of the Muslim world is nominal. That is, if you live in Indonesia, the easiest way to get along is to be a Muslim. If you live in Saudi Arabia, obviously, about the only way to get along is to be a Sunni Muslim. If you live in Iran, about the only way to get along is to be a Shiite Muslim.
It's cultural.
So,
it's cultural.
It's a cultural, yes. It's nominalism.
And we like it that way.
Well, it's just easier because if you're not, if you're a part of the al-Kitab, the people of the book, Jews or Christians, then you have to pay the jizya tax, and in essence, in many of those nations, there is a limit as to how far you can rise in the social order. And so a lot of Muslims, Islam today in those nations represents in many ways what Roman Catholicism represented the Middle Ages in many nations, where, that's just what you were born. It's all you knew.
It's your family.
It wasn't that you chose.
Yeah, it's your family. It's your family heritage.
Right.
It's cultural. Right. It's not really a personal devotion to the religion itself. It's they're nominal Christians. What I meant by the more nominal Muslims we have, the more we like it in the world, because it's when they become committed, that they become, quote, radicalized. That's when they become dangerous in many respects.
Well, you can have committed Muslims that are very much committed to a viewpoint that would interpret the Qur'an and the Hadith in a way that would not allow them to be violent. But you're correct. Those who take a very hard Quranic view and a certain interpretation of the Hadith end up very much like the man standing on the street in London just a few weeks ago.
Well, the ones
explaining very rationally what he did.
The ones who commit acts of jihad or violence against individuals or multiple, like in 9/11, they confess to be the true believers. That you don't ever find a jihadist that goes, I don't know if I believe it or not. It's just family, just my family history. So
true.
They're the ones.
That's
they're
very
one.
true. But we also need to recognize that kind of interpretation that they embrace is one of many, and that there are believing Muslims who are not hiding an AK-47 behind their back.
No, but how do you know the good ones from the bad ones?
Well, dialogue, conversation, find out where
what
they're
if they
coming
shoot
from,
you?
how they interpret key elements of the message of the Quran, especially Surah 9, Surah Al-Tawbah, and it's.
I understand, James. I'm being
unbelievers.
a little bit facetious here, but what I mean, but I am being, the other part of me is being serious here, because you have the part of the reason for I don't want to get too far off on the jihad movement, because that isn't what your book's about, much more than that, but is the part of jihadism, or the committing acts in the name, violent acts in the name of Allah, to please Allah, to kill the infidel, is deception. I mean, the kids up there who committed these Boston bombings and the 9/11, they deceive people in order to make them think they're peaceful, so they can then ultimately commit their acts.
So you're saying for a country,
I'm saying, how do I know the difference between a good Muslim and a violent Muslim? I don't until the act of violence has been committed. Is what I'm saying.
That's almost completely true. The only exception would be, obviously, if you have a close relationship with a Muslim person and you can honestly engage them in conversation. I don't think that Homeland Security would be able to tell the difference, but I think I could. But that would require knowing someone, really sitting down and talking with them over an extended period of time and observing their life, which is not something Homeland Security is going to be doing, and I'm not sure we want to even try to train them in anything like that anyways. I'm not sure that's their business.
Well,
but I do know Muslims who are very strong, believing Muslims who condemn wholeheartedly what was done there or what was done in other places. And I think we need to be careful, because the tendency, I know I get really upset. I have, for example, debated people on the subject of homosexuality, gay marriage. I debated gay marriage before it was popular